Yes, I'm recording and go live. 3, 2, 1, 0. Hi, everybody. This is Angelique from the Superwoman Babes Club with Calling in the One coach, Maxine Clancy, with step 3 tonight for the For Fuck's Sake, Why Am I Single series. And the first night of step 1 was really about being clear on your vision for happy, healthy love. Step 2 was last night, was about really understanding how to know whether you were actually ready, whether you have moved on from unfinished business. And step 3 is going to happen tonight. Tonight, Maxine is going to tell us all about core wounds and core wounds that prevent you from having happy, healthy love. And it's very important that we are addressing a very deep topic tonight. And I'm sure that a lot of you actually probably are very aware that in cities like London or Hong Kong, even where I am, with all the singles around us, that there are actually so many single people. I mean, there are so many available people, but there's so little people that actually do achieve happy, healthy love. So this is a very intriguing topic that I would love to actually know more about from the perspective of the Calling in the One coaching process. And whoever is here on the Facebook Live, please feel free to add your questions or your remarks because we can actually add them. So welcome, Maxine. Please tell us a little bit more about this important and vital step.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Angelique. Lovely to be here again this evening. Core wounds, healing core wounds. This is actually a really big subject. And to be fair, you could spend years. I mean, I think people do spend years working on core wounds. They're usually patterns that we develop from childhood, from our primary caregivers, that leave us with a feeling of incompleteness. And, you know, many of the people that are listening have heard about them in terms of the beliefs, the negative beliefs that we have about ourselves. So, you know, there's about 12 core ones that we work with in calling in the one, from, you know, I'm going to be alone, I'm bad, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'll never be loved, I'm not safe, it's not safe to be vulnerable, I'm not wanted. So these are the type of beliefs that we're looking at, and the core woundings that people have within themselves that really prevent them from having what we call happy, healthy love relationships, as opposed to relationships where they're quite dysfunctional.
Yes.
Sorry, I've got a really bad sore throat today, so excuse me if I'm swallowing. So really the way we look at it is that when you're incomplete in yourself and you're relating from the incomplete place within yourself, what tends to happen is situations in the relationship will trigger the negative belief. They'll trigger the false identity you have about yourself and will cause you to act out in certain ways. So, you know, just as an example, someone that has a belief system that says, I'm going to be alone, what tends to happen is that they're very self-sufficient in a relationship. They tend not to need anything from their partner. They tend not to ask for help. They're the type of people that will often run themselves to the ground, in terms of, you know, they do way too much. And often what will happen with someone that's got a belief system that says that I'm alone in the world, they will very likely stay too long in relationships, particularly in relationships that don't serve them. They avoid conflict in relationships because they're afraid if they truly express themselves that it will mean that the conflict will cause the relationship to end. Very often they become types of people that attract into them partners who are love avoidant, so they can become quite addicted to love in relationships. So they set up these strategies and these patterns that don't allow them to really have a healthy loving relationship.
Yeah. So I just want to be clear, Maxine, that ever since,
Yeah.
we have been talking about this topic ever since Sunday, and I've been doing my research, and I've actually been looking, really looking inside of what type of questions would serve our community of men and women. I actually have felt such a lightness inside of me just by, talking to you in depth about, actually the darkness around relationships. And so I really want to stress that, even me interviewing you has gone through such a transformation in such little time. And so
that's good.
yeah. So, but what is now coming up for me is really how, when we haven't healed our core wounds, and maybe you could say a little bit more about that, is that we tend to attract people, and we actually addressed it yesterday. We will always attract people that are going to trigger us, that stuff in us that will force us almost to look at our core wounds. Would you say that that is true? So that the person that is being triggered is always the common denominator, or are there exceptions to this?
That's quite a loaded question there, Angelique. It's a really good question. So there's a couple of ways. Certainly from a spiritual perspective, and we're I believe that we're spiritual beings, so therefore we're here to have a spiritual journey and to, for our soul to evolve and for consciousness to evolve. So from a spiritual perspective, in relationships, when your core wounds are triggered, when you attract someone to you, that person, well, in fact, everyone really, not just intimate relationships, but all relationships give you an opportunity at a soul level to have learning and to expand your consciousness. But particularly in intimate relationships, you are very likely, if you attract people to you that will enable you to heal the disowned parts of yourself. So we particularly look at it from the perspective of you're either complete or you're incomplete. When you're incomplete, you're sitting in your false love identity. And that false love identity, so it might be, it's not safe. The world's an unsafe place to be. And so therefore you might find that you're quite reckless, and you might, have lots of unsafe sexual partners. So when I say unsafe sexual partners, I'm not saying that there's, where you put yourself in situations where you don't trust the person, or you don't know the person, or where you can actually create situations that fundamentally are unsafe. So, you might be in abusive types of relationships, those types of things. And what's happening is in that moment, you have the ability to find learning and to complete yourself. So when you're relating to yourself, so when you really work on the core beliefs, and you begin to see, actually, you know what, the world is safe, providing I learn to have healthy boundaries, providing I learn that actually, safety is about me trusting myself and learning to not sort of trusting yourself that you can be safe in the world. So when you start to shift the perspective and you relate from your adult self, from your true sense of self, what happens is you'll start to put different types of boundaries in place. You will start to act in congruently with your new belief system.
Okay. And this is one topic that I've actually looked into for a very long time, which is our wiring, because I've been working with Dr. Joe Dispenza, or I've been studying his stuff and doing his meditation.
Yes.
And when we were talking about core wounds, what I know from my own experience and from working with my own clients now, that sometimes, our childhood, and I can see it even in children around me, they have adaptation strategies that are so deeply wired in their identity, meaning they get their needs met through certain types of behavior. And sometimes some of these unconstructive false self images or even identities really get them a lot of things that they want, and they can also be quite addictive. So for instance, anger can be quite addictive, or even depression can create its own addiction. So how I know that calling in the one is a 7-week process, and as you said, we can do this for the rest of our lives. How have you seen people get type sort of like a shift in 1 week, because we're dealing with such deep stuff.
So we particularly, I'm sure you're aware that beliefs, you just said it yourself, that beliefs are held not only in the mind, but they're held in the body.
Yes.
So and we know from the biology of belief with Bruce Lipton that we create chemicals consistent with our belief systems. So we create peptides, etc., which create those addictive patterns of emotions around the beliefs. So one of the things that we do in Calling in the One is that we really acknowledge that the belief does reside in the body. And so we take clients through a body awareness process where they drop right down into the body and they actually feel the belief in the body. They find the belief where it resides in the body. And then we do a process where we work, we develop a relationship through the belief in the body, the age of the belief in the body, and then we bring in the adult self, and we have a dialogue between the two, the younger self and the adult self. Obviously the adult self connecting to the wiser, fully expressed, all the skills and talents and tools that you have from your adult perspective, and they actually create a relationship and a dialogue. And it's through that process of actually really embodying the two together. So in some way you can actually say that your adult self parents the younger self, and there's many therapies that look from that perspective, and it's a process. And through that process, we work with the client in order to create a love power statement, which they use in their practical everyday life to shift the power from the false identity to the true identity. And what's beautiful about it, Angelique, is that, as you say, it's deep work, but I have seen so many shifts in my clients when they do this work and they get this aha, wow, that's what's going on for me. And then they learn how to use this process. And once you understand the process and you've nailed the process, it's a process that you can practice yourself. You can do it if you're having a difficult situation. You can easily drop into the process and use it in your everyday life. And when we have quite a number of different processes which we teach clients that they can use on a daily basis that help them to remain in their false true sense of self as opposed to the false sense of self.
Yeah.
About developing new ways of relating, and the first most important thing is that you have that new relationship within yourself that then you can practice externally in the outside world.
Okay.
We're at 12 minutes.
We're 12 minutes. Okay. So that brings me to the next question. Imagine that you are relatively, let's say, together yourself, right? And I know a lot of coaches and therapists and facilitators of really deep transformational workshops, and but what I see sometimes, and I see it in my own life, that although we have all this wisdom and we actually are very sane, let's say, relatively mature, and we can handle our own triggers, we somehow attract people that are not there yet. How is that addressed? Is that also part of a core wounding? Because what I see, and I have to take responsibility as well and own this, meaning it's like sometimes healers or therapists or coaches, they have this savior pattern, and I think it has been addressed in some of the archetypal work, that if you see yourself as a savior, you're always going to look for somebody to save, and then so say you have your core wounds really in place, let's say, but somehow you always attract really unhealthy partners, or partners that are just not there yet. What type of wound is that? I mean, I think I know the answer, but
well, that's quite an interesting thing, because I do think there's, interestingly enough, I was dating a man last year, and I really liked him. He was a really, really, really lovely man, and he had many, many qualities that that I was definitely, looking for in the man that I want in my life, type thing. And there was a couple of things that he wasn't really very focused on health, which I'm very focused on health. But he was, he was fairly conscious, and he had many, many qualities that I really liked about him, etc. But he, remember one evening we were out to dinner, he actually said to me, he said, "Oh, well, you're a fixer, Maxine." Oh. And it was really funny because I was kind of annoyed that he said that about me, and it's true. I do, or in fact, I used to like to fix people. And funny enough, if I'd have stayed in the relationship with him, I would have been trying to fix his health issues.
Oh,
I actually, for a number of reasons, I actually decided not, I said to him, this isn't the relationship that I want. But it's really interesting. I think that part of life and part of, consciousness is having the ability to be able to observe and have the awareness of what is playing out before you in life, and being able to choose how you are responding to situations. And I think that sometimes life will bring you people that allows you to, you have a choice. Do I want to be in a type of relationship like this with this type of person? And he was a lovely man. I mean, he really was a lovely man. But there were certain things about him that I just thought, you know what? He drank too much, he wasn't really into his health, etc., etc. And I just thought, I could stay with this man, but actually no, I want to be with a man who's X, Y, and Z. So I think life brings you, the more conscious you become, the more aware of the choices you are, and the more you can see why something is coming to you, and is that something you want to choose for yourself, or is it something you don't want to choose? And I think when you're unconscious and when you're unaware, that's when you don't really have the true ability to choose in alignment with your vision for yourself and your life. And, ideally, you create partnerships with people where you have visions, shared visions, and, shared journeys, but you're still able to be true to yourself within that vision.
And this is so true, that actually when we are in these toxic addictions of neediness or pushing people away, those are two types of strategies. Either you are avoidant, you're afraid of being overwhelmed, so you basically avoid too much intimacy, or you are the one that's afraid that the other person is running away, you have fear of abandonment. These two types of people tend to attract each other. But when you are in those type of dynamics, you actually are so, basically possessed by these chemicals that you actually sometimes will forget about your vision, and you actually start acting out those patterns that have nothing to do with awareness. And I think absolutely awareness is the ability to observe yourself or your younger self, or that I would say wounded lover complex acting out in certain moments, and then actually being able to address it in nonviolent communication, where you basically you can have the honesty and the maturity to say, this is what's going on, and thank you for bringing that to the awareness, and I take full responsibility for this, and I envision in alignment with my vision, this is who I would like to be, and this is how I will endeavor to show up. These are the commitments that I make. But this doesn't really happen very often in relationships. I've been lucky enough to actually have had these type of very conscious relationships where my partners call me out because they were very well trained coaches themselves, and they would just observe me, and I could just admit to them saying, what, I'm being triggered, and this is what will happen, and this is what is happening right now. And I think, to develop this type of open, honest, vulnerable, deeply vulnerable communication, where, before I could actually talk about this when I was in other relationships, I wouldn't talk about it, because when I spoke about it, I thought these people will abandon me, because my belief was so strong that people would abandon me, that, you know, you'd rather push them away first before you get abandoned. And it felt so unsafe. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm just thinking like, wow, you know, even if people can just learn to be just so truthful towards the person that they're so like have this dynamic with, that either this person is going to overwhelm you or abandon you, even if you can release that filter, that is just another, you know, just another filter that you have, then I think we can, dehypnotize ourselves out of that, out of that dynamic.
Yeah. No, it's, do you know what? And I think it goes back to people's intention in their relationship, you know, the intention to have a commitment where you create a space for openness, non-judgmental, you know, non-judgments, honesty, and where you always seek to see the highest good in each other, that you're both, that, you know, that the intention from both of you in the relationship is to look for the best, particularly in times of difficulty, in times of conflict, because, you know, if you have a you know, a vow or a commitment to that in your relationship, that you know, you seek to see that, and you always seek to aspire to that, and you have generosity of spirit towards each other, then those sort of commitments, you know, where you're consciously, and you know that, you know, that relationships are a place for growth. I mean, I think really healthy, conscious relationships, they recognize and honor that the relationship is there for you both to grow and to become your best selves, and that there is a healing in the relationship, and that when you sort of honor that and recognize that in the relationship, I think that you then begin to set the grounds for something very different happening to what is the, you know, what is been known as the norm, or perhaps the types of relationships that you've observed, you know, in other people around you, in family members, etc. So it's really consciously choosing to have a relationship that's evolving differently. I think that's essential for me, you know, in my relationships. It's essential that we're looking to relate from that place. And that's, you know, you have to have a conversation around that. And then, you know, we you know, in knowing in the Superwoman Babes, you know, it's a club where people are interested in consciousness, they're interested in personal development, but a lot of the population aren't, and that's not, you know, to judge them, but it's just that, you know, if people want to have different types of relationships, we have to learn this stuff. We don't necessarily learn it as we're growing up, you know. I mean, actually, funny enough, they're starting to change the schooling system. We're bringing in life skills and stuff, but generally people don't learn these skills, and we learn from the people around us.
I think, you know, I think just technology and all the you know, the availability of the self, you know, what we would call self-help seminars, or basically books and recordings, and the openness of the new generation of teachers that I've worked with, who are so open about their own wounding, like, you know, Tony Robbins sharing about his own pain and how he turned it around, and seeing Tony on stage, you know, and I've seen at least more than 252 videos of him doing life interventions, seeing him doing it live, you know, with people who are way worse off than I am, or, you know, big teachers talking about how, you know, how their parents affected them, and that they were suicidal when they were kids. I mean, that has really, really helped me become a much more courageous person in my normal life, meaning, you know, I don't think that there is anybody out there without some kind of core wound. And I think from the culture that I'm from, you know, which is an Asian culture, where there's a lot of saving face type of strategies going on, which is, I think, not dissimilar to the British one, where it's all about, you know, keeping up appearances. You know, I think just overcoming that cultural, taboo taboo of actually,
Yeah.
this has happened in my family, or this has happened in my childhood, and this is the way
Yeah.
that I've been formed, and I'm not perfect yet, or I'm just striving to be perfect, and that you can actually address it openly and in a vulnerable way and not be judged by it. That is a huge step, you know, for everybody to take. And for people who are listening to this that, you know, think, wow, gosh, no, you know, I'm not there yet, you know, I can just say, and probably Maxine can attest to this as well, this is a huge step that you can take, but it will open up so much, what is it? It will open up a gateway for you to embrace all of the growth and expansion that relationships can bring in because of your vulnerability, and the type of people that you will be attracted to. Because suddenly, if you are able to take the step to even talk about core wounds, or you know, or even to address it when they are triggered, you are going to definitely weed out the people that are scared by it, that don't want to talk about it, that are offended by it, or that are think it's too much hard work to even look into themselves. Would you agree, Maxine?
Without a doubt. I mean, you know, the goal that you find when you do this sort of transformational work, and when you really work on yourself, is amazing. And the types of relationships that you have are completely different to the ones that you previously had. You know, it's funny, I was working with a client this evening before our call, and she'd been dating a man, and she did a very similar thing where she just realized, you know, this is not true to the type of person that I want to have in my life. I want to have someone that really honors me. And she said it was hard to say, you know, oh, I'm just not going to see this person, because she, you know, she liked him, but she just realized that, you know, she's not prepared to deny her own truth, because if she denies her own truth, she's dishonoring herself.
Yes.
And she's had a pattern of relationships where she's dishonored. So if you're going to perpetuate your own belief system, if you're going to perpetuate that in your life, then you have to take responsibility. And that is the difference, you see, when you take responsibility, and when you know, together in a partnership, you both take responsibility for being, you know, for yourself and how you show up in the relationship, then anything is possible. And you really can have completely different relationships to the ones that you've had in the past. So it's it takes courage. It does take courage, and it takes practice, and it takes learning, but it can be lots of fun as well. I mean, really good fun. It doesn't have to be, you know, serious all the time.
Yeah, I know. And what I think is so beautiful about this healing core wounds, it can be quite painful. So most of the time, you know that core wounds are being triggered when your friends keep on talking about the same thing with different partners, and you keep seeing the same pattern coming up in the same course with clients. And that's why we call it a pattern. But when it's happening for the people involved, it can be super triggering. Like most of the time what you see is people block each other from Facebook, from WhatsApp, and they sort of go into this childish tantrum type of reaction in the beginning. And then they have to take ownership and say, you know what, this is really just a childish pattern. Because if you hang around kids for long enough, you'll see how they react. And there's not a lot of difference between adults reacting to that like that and
well, the thing is that actually children react and then they let it go. Adults react and they keep reacting and they don't let things go. And we take things so personally. If people learned not to take things personally in their relationships, and actually to take a step back and actually just acknowledge that very often someone is reacting. Well, if anyone's in reaction, then they're not, unless it's a life-death situation and they're reacting to a fire or things like that. But when people are in reaction in relationship, it's not usually about that actual moment in time. It's just triggering their past experience, beliefs, references about whatever they made it mean at that particular time that something happened. And we get stacked, stack it all up. And before we know it, we're ka-ching, we're letting it all out in one go. And that in itself, it's what happens, the unfortunate thing about that is when that happens a lot in relationships, it slowly chips away at the relationship, at the belief in the relationship, at the trust in the relationship, at the goodness in the world, and well-being of the relationship.
Yes, yes.
And people have to have a willingness and a want to change that, and they have to begin to start to want a different type of relationship. And unfortunately, you know, we see it on, I mean, I don't watch anything like EastEnders
Soap
or soaps
opera.
yeah, I mean, you know, we just see the way television feeds
Yes.
victimization in people. And you know, you have to say that, you know, unfortunately a lot of people live from a very unconscious victim type perspective. Well, you know, the minute that you decide, you know what, I'm going to take radical responsibility for myself, my happiness, my joy, how much love I experience in the world, then it's when you make that choice about yourself and your life, that's when you reclaim your power and your authority, and you're able to stand in your own voice. And that's when you start to, you know, to see the world and live in the world very differently. And that is the, you know, that in Calling in the One, that is the first thing we look for when we're working with people. Have they got the ability to take responsibility for themselves and begin to see how they are showing up in any situation? And that, you know, that's the starting point. And I think that's the starting point for any type of transformation. People have to take responsibility for themselves.
Yeah. So I just want to ask the last question, because it just came up, and I really want to know the answer, which is, you know, unhealthy emotional needs or wants or desires for, you know, what would create happy, unhealthy love. Could you mention a few of them? Because I know from my own experience that a lot of the time the pain in relationship is about this other person is not meeting my unconscious needs for XYZ. And very often these needs are so basically they're conscious, but they're based on such unconscious false identities and unhealthy needs that I think it would be worthwhile to actually address it. Could you maybe share a few of them that actually are very, very prominent in our modern world relationships?
Yeah, so I mean, particularly, you know, I'm not good enough. I think, you know, and I think it's really interesting. We have a core fundamental false identity. Generally, most people have one that they really go to. But if you know anything about the Enneagram as well, it's people move around and they can move around them. But I actually think that everybody has, to some degree, the belief that I'm not good enough. You know, it plays out in some area of their life. So often that person will be very self-depreciating. They'll say negative things about themselves, you know, even when other people are trying to praise them. They tend to, you know, overcommit. You're someone that will really take on way more than you possibly could, because you feel you have to compensate for the fact that you're not good enough. So, you know, you might have a great job and you might do really well, and you might be doing well in your job, but you constantly will perhaps, you know, overdo things in order to try to prove to yourself and to others that you're good enough for the job or something like that. And in relationships, you know, if you're doing that in your relationships, guaranteed what usually happens is this type of person will be the one that puts way more energy into the relationship than the other person does. They're always over investing into the relationship, and then because they're over investing, probably they have expectations around their partner, what they're going to get from their partner, what they're going to receive in the relationship. And more often than not, this person will end up feeling constantly disappointed, let down, because they will never be able to get enough from the other person. They generally, it's a vicious cycle. They won't be able to do enough, and they'll never get. And that in itself feeds this feeling of not being. It perpetuates the belief system. And you know, often what this type of person will do, they'll either get depressed or they get really angry, and that's when they get all the resentment. So they suppress all their emotions because they're too afraid to actually say what they're really feeling.
I think
and then they build these resentments. And so before you know it, you've got yourself caught in a cycle, and then that's when someone ends up having that, you know, they suddenly let it all out, and people look at them and say, oh, I don't get what's wrong with this person. Why are they so annoying? You know, they're usually so nice. You know, they can be a bit of a martyr sometimes, this type of if you get really caught up in your own sort of I'm not good enough belief system. So yeah, I mean, they're really real experiences for people that get caught up, and you know, it's like a constant need to prove that they're worthy of love. And then of course what can happen is they get triggered, and then they move around the Enneagram. They move around from, you know, trying to get control, trying to feel that they are well, to be honest, actually, it's quite exhausting. I mean, I'm just sort of thinking, what does it feel like in the body, just describing that person? It's exhausting. I feel for them.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's painful. It's really painful. So one of the things we're looking at is, well, what sort of behavior patterns do you have? What are you? How are you relating to other people, and how are you showing up? And what do you need to learn? What new skills do you need to learn? What developmental skills do you need to learn? Because at some point in childhood, there's some sort of missing development, and that's what we look to do, and that's how people start to move forward and make a shift and change.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Angelique?
Well, you know, the list of unhealthy needs that I was looking for, probably that would be a new book. So no, you partially definitely did answer the question.
Oh, okay. So other unhealthy needs, is that what you want as well?
Yeah, that was the question, but maybe my long-winded
Okay.
unfocused.
So yeah, I mean, people with lack of boundaries, people being unable to express their feelings, people not being able to deal with conflict, people not being transparent. What else? You know, people that don't validate each other, don't praise each other, that don't have healthy respect and positive regard for each other. These are all the types of you know, the sort of ways that people are unhealthy in their relationships.
Yeah. And we haven't even mentioned that people are actually very often projecting their own demons. You know, so when we talk about unowned stuff, we're not only not owning our part in creating these type of what we would call unhealthy or dysfunctional dynamics. We are also very often guilty of projecting our shadow onto our most intimate partners, whether it's like a sibling or a business partner or a soulmate, a so-called soulmate. Yeah,
I mean, projection is everything. Projection is when you disown the parts of yourself that you don't like within yourself.
Yeah.
You know, so often there's always a pattern where you get someone in the relationship that's very angry, and it's usually that very often you'll find there's one person in the relationship that doesn't get angry at all, and there's someone that gets very angry, and often that person that's very angry will be carrying a lot of the projections of the other person, because the other person doesn't really express themselves and is suppresses a lot of their emotion. You know, a good way, I don't know if you've ever seen where you have two jars. If you imagine the jars being filled with water and there's a tube between the two of them. Well, if one, you know, because you're in an energetic relationship with each other, and if one person suppresses the emotion, all the water goes up into the other tube, so they're likely to feel more emotion. So a good example of that is you've had a great day, you come home, and suddenly, you know, you start to feel agitated or irritated, and you're thinking, why am I feeling agitated or irritated? And what it is, your partner's annoyed about something, but they don't want to say to you that they're actually annoyed with you, that maybe you did something, maybe you moved something, whatever it is that's going on for them, but they don't feel that it's safe to express their anger or to, you know, they want to avoid the conflict in the relationship. So they don't say anything. And then you're feeling this, you know, this unconscious anger that's going on, but nobody names it. Nobody says anything about it. And that's, you know, it's a common thing when people don't feel safe to express themselves, then that's, you know, that's what happens in relationships. Someone will feel it. Their feelings there. You know, this is why people always know. Take you know, when someone's cheating on someone, when someone's having relationships outside of the relationship, and sometimes not even sexual relationships, but they're, you know, they've got you know, they're having an emotional affair or something like this. Someone always knows when the other person is no longer present, because people start to relate differently. You know, just the little things. You know, you if you've got to think of relationships as an energy exchange, and so, you know, when you're really in love with each other and you're really, you know, into each other, etc., your energies will come together differently to how your energies come together if you're codependent. You know, you'll overlap. If you have what we call a healthy relationship, you know, you're able to sort of, you know, your energies exist side by side, but, you know, you're not taking each other's space and you're not vying for energy all the time. And guaranteed, you know, relationships that have problems, there's this desire to grab the energy, to get the energy in order to control situations. So, you know, if you're looking for a healthy relationship, you're very aware of how energy is exchanged between you, and how the, you know, the masculine and the feminine energy. I mean, there's so many different elements that come into relationships. We can talk for weeks.
I know. Thank you so much, Maxine. I think for our viewers that are interested in the Calling Into One process and working with Maxine, I think just this conversation will have enlightened you in the myriad of ways of how, you know, not healing our core wounds will actually self-perpetuate, you know, just basically false beliefs about ourselves and about, you know, the possibility for us to actually create vulnerability and more power and more choice in our relationships, whether they are in love or whether they are in actually other types of relationships. So again, if you want to have you know, a chat with Maxine just to understand how she works or whether it would be right for you, do contact her or me, because she has set up some really heavily discounted discovery sessions in order to help raise money for Nourish the Children, which will feed a child for a month. The sessions are £16 for 30 minutes and £32 for an hour. And they're just for you to actually have an understanding of how, you know, maybe some of the patterns in your life have contributed to what is going on now for you, or, you know, maybe getting more clarity about what's going on in your life. So thank you so much, Maxine. I've really enjoyed listening to you again. And just although it's such a
although this time, and thanks to everybody that's listening. I hope you found it informative and helpful. And if you've got any questions, please either write them in the comments below or message me, and I'd be more than happy to help. And obviously, sometimes, you know, this is quite a deep subject. If it's something that's got triggered in you, then please do reach out, and I'm more than happy to assist you in any way that I can.
Yeah, and of course, this is really a deep topic, but I promise you, everybody, when you do the work, you know, your life will just get so much lighter, because you will stop blaming. You will stop blaming your childhood. You'll stop blaming life. You'll stop blaming God, your astrology, or whatever it is that you blame. You will actually take responsibility and find out that there's so much lightness when you do this work. Your life will just incrementally get better, because you will start to really take power over the addictions and false identities that have kept you trapped. And I really promise that from the knowledge that I have from all the people around me in my tribe that are really living examples of doing their own what I would call the core work of becoming their best selves. And you cannot become your best selves if you do not address these core wounds, because they do not just apply to romantic relationships, they apply to all relationships in life.
They do. Very well said. That's absolutely true.
Yeah. So again, Calling Into One is not about, you know, the one is not just a romantic relationship. It's calling up your best self. You are the one is you being the best self, and you being able to actually proactively create these powerful dynamics with people that you choose to interact with.
Absolutely. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. You are the one.
Yes. Maxine,
Okay, so we're back
so much.
tomorrow, and we're talking about setting your course for love tomorrow.
Setting your course for love.
Setting your course for love. Yeah.
Okay. That
So,
sounds amazing. So I look forward to our session tomorrow, and I'll upload this. Thank you, everybody, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. Okay.
Look forward to it. Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good night.